Hello and welcome to the Evercade Retreat. Gene Joke here, and today I'm going to talk about Asteroids and Missile Command. I'm going to be adding both these games to my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever. So why am I combining these two? Because of the Atari Lynx compilation that is Missile Command, or Super Missile Command and Super Asteroids, or whatever it's called. There's a number of versions of both games on the Evercade, so we'll just go through them, I guess. So let's start off with Asteroids. What is there to say about Asteroids that hasn't been said before? Yes, it's a classic. It's been converted, ripped off, cloned, adapted, modified ad nauseum, but it is a classic. And I do enjoy the Asteroids gameplay, but I am pretty much over it. It's not something that it's not something that excites me. It's not a game that I hear mentioned or sees on a compilation or a collection and think, oh, I've got to play that. Actually, one of the very first games I tried developing while I was learning a few bits was a really crappy Asteroids clone. I might even put some footage up here. But anyway, let's start off with the games on the Evercade. And I'm going to start off with the arcade original that isn't the arcade original and just a tweaked version. It's labelled on the car as Asteroids Deluxe, but it isn't Asteroids Deluxe, that is another edition. This is Asteroids with a fancy background. Put that aside, it's Asteroids. It has the vector graphics, it has the classic arcade sounds, it has the classic gameplay. It's Asteroids, pretty much. Honestly, I think the vector graphics still have a lot of charm to them, and it still plays well. I like this one. Placing it in my ranking list, well, I've never been the biggest Asteroids fan. I've liked it just fine, but there are other games of the era that I prefer. So this arcade version of Asteroids is going to go above Pac-Man for the NES, but below Burger Time arcade version. So let's get on to Asteroids for the 2600. Naturally, this is a bit of a cut down version. It couldn't match the arcade, and it doesn't have the vector graphics. This is very garishly coloured, it's even simplified, the movement of the asteroids is different. There's no hyperspace, and this really isn't a particularly great version. I suppose back in the day it was, you had asteroids at home, but playing it today I'd play any other version over this one. But it does still have that classic Asteroids gameplay for the most part. Placing it in my ranking list, I would put it above Alley Cat, but below Cannon Bomber Arcade. So next, let's move on to the 7800 version of Asteroids. This one, once again, doesn't have the vector graphics, and it came out later. But even with your sort of raster graphics, it does a much better job of representing the arcade. Well, it's not really trying to, it's trying to enhance the arcade in a certain respect, I suppose. And it's bright and colourful, but I don't think it has the same level of charm as the vector graphics myself. The gameplay is much faster here. You nip about much more quickly than you do in the original, and it takes a little bit of adjusting to. But I actually have more fun with this than the arcade original. So placing on my ranking list, I would put it above Centipede for the 2600, but below Bridge Strike. And finally we have Super Asteroids as found on the Atari Lynx in the Super Asteroids Super Missile Command double pack. This version, once again, is an updated version using raster graphics. It makes changes to, I suppose, suit the Atari Lynx aspect ratio. The play area is smaller, the sprites are larger, and you have a shield rather than one-hit deaths. It also features some power-ups to increase your firepower. This isn't a bad version, but it's one I don't really find myself coming back to very often. Maybe it's the shield against one-hit death thing, but I find that it loses something. I've never quite sunk my teeth into it as much as I have other ones. Placing on my overall ranking list, I would place it above Lost Tomb, but below Thunder Castle. So let's move on to the Missile Command stuff. Let's go in reverse order. Let's start off with Super Missile Command. This is the companion to Super Asteroids for the Atari Lynx. There's some changes made here. There's a whole store upgrade system which really adds some depth to Missile Command. And while my first impression of this game was a little bit negative, I thought it was just like a not great version of Missile Command. But once you start introducing the power-ups, things you can buy, it changes up the gameplay a little bit. This version of Missile Command has a bit more meat on its bones, and I appreciate that. Placing on my overall ranking list, I'd place it above Centipede for the 2600, but below Asteroids 7800. So next we have the arcade original Missile Command, which is a classic. I really enjoyed Missile Command back in the day, but it does suffer from that. I've played it to death, I've played so many versions of it that it's lost its luster somewhat, and I don't really come back to it that often, and often when I do I kind of get a feeling if I can't be bothered. But it is undeniably a classic, and I do recall how much I enjoyed it in the past, but other versions of it. So this is going to rank quite low, perhaps lower than it deserves because of other versions. So placing my ranking list, I would put it above Asteroids for the NES, but below Armalite. Which finally brings us on to the Atari 2600 version of Missile Command, and this is a slightly stripped down version of Missile Command. You just have one button for firing missiles, so you're not having to worry about where your missiles are coming from. There's a few other subtle changes, but this is closer to the Missile Command that I played back in the day, playing it on one of the Atari home computers. It actually feels more like Missile Command to me than the arcade original. I know that's just my dodgy nostalgia, or it's nostalgia talking. I have more fun playing this than the arcade original, and depending on my mood, sometimes I prefer playing it to the Lynx version. It depends on whether I just want a quick pick up and play, or if I want to sink my teeth into a proper playthrough like with the Lynx version. So this might surprise some people, and this is probably a weird ranking, but in my overall ranking list I will place it above Super Missile Command, but below Asteroids 7800. So yeah, these have ranked a bit lower than others might, but again, it really comes down to I've played these games to death, so many versions and iterations and clones of them over the years that I'm kind of over them. They don't have that luster anymore. Anyway, I think that's it for this video. I think I've rambled on enough about these games. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.